Typhoid fever is a disease caused by a germ called Salmonella typhi. This disease, though is a household name, but it's a very serious disease that is systemic in nature. Contrary to general belief that typhoid is probably an intestinal disease. Typhoid is a systemic disease, very serious, it's an acute emergency in anybody that has it. Well, I understand maybe your own concept of pure water is the commonly packaged water. It is a water-borne disease, a water and food-borne disease. It has a lot of contamination. But if your pure water is the packaged one, the answer is yes or no. If the water is contaminated with typhoid organism, yes, it can cause it. If it's not contaminated with it, it cannot cause it. But any food substance or drink or water that is contaminated with Salmonella typhi organism can cause typhoid disease. Well, currents is not normal, so to speak, in the sense that if you do what you're supposed to do to avoid typhoid, it's not going to recur. But if you continuously go to the source, contaminated water, contaminated food, to take your food or water, then you have typhoid over and over and over. But to a large extent, over time, you tend to develop some level of immunity. So the rate of occurrence might, be prolonged from time to time. But ideally, it shouldn't recur if you really take all the adequate measures to protect yourself. Well, generally, at initial stage, you might find it difficult to differentiate it from the common malaria that we have. Fever is there, high fever, but the one thing about typhoid fever is that it has a pattern we call the cascade type of fever. You have fever, for instance, in the morning, it stabilizes at that particular temperature for some hours, and then goes up to a higher level. It stabilizes there for some hours, goes up. That is assuming there is no interruption of the disease. So the fever continues to rise up to a particular level that you can no longer cope with it. That is one major symptom of typhoid. Like I said, generalized body pain. Initially, you may have little passage of loose stools. You have some enlarged spleen. You can have vomiting. You can have loss of appetite. So there is no symptom or group of symptoms initially you can pin down to say this is typhoid. So it manifests in diverse forms and it depends on the stage at which you catch the patient. But generally, by the time you treat the patient, you think it's malaria, it has malaria, and it's not getting well. You want to expand your scope of investigation. And it's in the course of this investigation that you come to the conclusion that probably this is typhoid, and then you move along that line. Well, once you don't take in contaminated water or food, you avoid typhoid entirely. You say something you acquire by fecal oral. Usually find some areas, the same place where they collect drinking water is where they defecate into, that's where they put all sorts of garbage. So those ones are breeding ground for the organism. But once you avoid water from such sources, or you don't eat carelessly anyhow, because some people who are carriers might contaminate the food even they prepare for the public. So once you avoid those areas, then you can avoid typhoid completely. If you suspect typhoid, the first thing to go to the doctor. Typhoid, I can tell you, when a patient has true typhoid, no patient has typhoid and remains at home. If you remain at home, you have a over 95% chance of dying. So it's not a disease you can say you go and buy a drug and treat yourself. That is not for typhoid. And that is why when people say they have typhoid, we just ignore them, because a patient that has typhoid must be in the hospital for treatment. It's an acute emergency. You must be in the treatment in the hospital. You must be admitted. It's not something you can treat at home. It's a very serious disease because it's actually a bloodstream infection. It's an infection affecting the blood that can now spread to other areas of the body. So anybody that has typhoid disease must be admitted in the hospital. It's a serious problem and nobody survives treating himself or herself at home. But like I said, it's from contaminated food and water. So if a community has a source of water and it's contaminated, you can go around to anybody that drinks from there. Or you attended a party and the food is contaminated by those who prepared it. Maybe they are carriers of somebody that is a carrier of typhoid. You eat from that source, it then spreads all over. Or somebody brings it to the family, nobody knows a carrier, and then contaminates food meant for the family or things like that, then you can get it. So it's a disease that is spread by contaminated food and water. When you say contagious, we are very careful with the choice of words. Contagious is a disease you get by contact, direct contact. That is not strictly speaking what typhoid is all about. It's a communicable disease rather, but not contagious the way in the true sense of the meaning of that word. So it's a communicable, in other words, it can be transmitted from one person to the other, possibly through a vehicle like food and water that I mentioned. So it's a communicable disease, not necessarily a contagious disease. Yes, typhoid is curable if you get it early. If you delay taking action against typhoid, the person is likely to die. So if you catch the patient early enough and institute the correct management of typhoid, it can be cured. Well, essentially at the initial stage when you take in the organism through food or water, the initial event takes place in the gastrointestinal tract, but that does not really, that is not much of a consequence at that time. Eventually when it enters the blood, that's the major point of problem. Once it enters the blood, it affects the blood, and then anything that enters the blood can go to any organ. It can go to the brain, it can go to the lungs, it can go to anything, bone, marrows, everything, it spreads. So it can affect any organ in the body once it has gotten access into the blood. So that is why it's a very serious problem, because it's a disease that affects the blood system and can affect any other organ. So a lot of organs can affect, the brain can be affected. You have people who have developed some kind of psychotic problem, what we call typhoid psychosis. You know, think that as if they are mad people because of typhoid. You have it affecting the intestine at a stage, causing perforation of the intestinal tract that can lead to serious surgical emergencies. So it can affect a number of organs. Bone marrow can be there. It can lodge in the liver. It can also get into the gallbladder, and so on and so forth. So it can spread to any tissue organ in the body. Well, the commonest test that people talk about is the so-called wider test. But I want to say it very quickly here that is one of the most useless and irrelevant tests that people still do today. That's a decaying test. It has lived already, it's no longer of any relevance to the modern medicine. But it's fine that the people still request for it here and there. It does not convey any useful information. What is even being done today is not the conventional wider test that was described in the 50s when the test was first developed. So today in modern medicine, wider test has no place. The most important test for for typhoid is blood culture. That is the standard test for typhoid. If you can't do that, or you do that, you're not satisfied, you can do stool culture or urine culture. The water test is out of the way. It's a useless test, and anybody doing it is just wasting money. Typhoid fever, like I said, it can affect the brain, leading to what we call typhoid psychosis. It can affect the intestine, it can perforate it, and then spill the entire intestinal content into the abdominal cavity, leading to surgical emergencies. It can affect the heart, it can affect the spleen, it can affect any organ can be affected. So long as it's in the blood, it can go to anywhere and affect any organ in the system. In conclusion, typhoid is avoidable, it's preventable, it's curable. For every disease, early diagnosis and prompt treatment is the answer. And you can avoid it by ensuring that you drink potable water, that is clean water that is not contaminated, and that you do not eat from suspicious sources. Once you avoid those situations, you can be free of typhoid for a long time, even not for life.
life. It's my life. HD.